Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to take a look at something new from Altenew. As you know, I don't do very much card making or stamping on my channel these days, but Altenew is coming out with new professional watercolors, and they invited me to try them out and do a review, and that's what we're going to do today. So here is the beautiful shipping box that they were sent in. And I do like boxes like this because then you can reuse them. You can either use them to wrap presents in or store things in, which is nice. They're nice and sturdy. Beautiful tissue paper. I will definitely use that for some collaging because it's kind of like almost like a deli paper with gold printing. So that's super gorgeous. I do love the attention to detail that certain companies put in their products. Now, I think I have a receipt here. Even though this was sent to me for free for review purposes, they also include a receipt usually. Maybe this isn't it. Nope, that's not it. Shoot. I was hoping it would say what the regular price of these paints are going to be, but I'll have that information for you before this review goes up. These are going to be released on September 25th. It is August 28th when I'm looking at these here, and let's take a look and see what we have. So, in this box, we have a metal tin, and it is, got your tray here, there's no pans in them. I have pans, so it's not a big deal. It's got the Altenew branding on it, which is handy if you're like me and you have a bunch of different sets and you want to keep them separated. And we have a set of fine watercolor brushes in sizes 3/0, which would be that tiny little spotter, 1, 2, 4, and 6. These are all much smaller than I usually use. Maybe a 6 would probably be 6 or a 4 might be the smallest I generally use, but I will give them a try. I have used their brushes in the past and didn't really care for them, so I'm hoping that these will be better. I just didn't find they carried very much paint and water for watercolor, but other people seem to like them. They do have like a comfort grip on them, and they all have these little caps, which you should remove and throw away because, or recycle them into another project. Like you could wrap them with fabric and make beads out of them. That would be actually a really cool project to try. So let me know if you want me to do that in the comments below. I guess I better save these in case you guys want to see that. There's a little, they're very lightly sized, a quick little rinse. We'll take that amount of sizing out of them. They're golden Taklon. Yeah, those are going to be, those are good. They'll be fine. I'm not having too high hopes for the brushes, but I think they're going to be fine. I don't know how much those will cost. Like I said, I will find out what the retail prices of these will be. All right, so now we have the meat of the video, which would be the boxes of paint tubes. So let's take a look here. They're all individually boxed, which is maybe a little bit extra packaging, but I like it better than a plastic blister hang tab, which usually when you get watercolors sold individually by the tube from craft companies, they're usually kind of like blister packaged so they can hang up at a craft store. But since Altenew generally sells direct to consumer, they're in these little boxes, probably to prevent them from being crushed. They are pretty sturdy, actually. Maybe there's a way to reuse these. They're kind of cute, actually. They kind of remind me of little Pantone chips. I'm gonna have to see if there's a way I can reuse those into something cute because they're kind of cute. So on the box, what do we have for info? We have artistry by Altenew.com, made in China. We've got ALT7035. That must be the product number. Copyright 2023, Altenew LLC, all rights reserved. PR122, so we got the pigment information and we got light fastness 1 and a little box here for indicating transparency. And is that information on the tube as well? Yes, it's all on the tube as well, so there's really no need to keep the box unless you've got a fancy way to recycle it. You know, though, I'm thinking there's got to be a way to use that for something cute because I love the colors on them. The boxes are cute. The tube looks very familiar to me, and I'm going to have to compare that to other tubes that I have, but to me, these look like Cotman watercolor tubes and the Phoenix watercolor tubes, which allegedly are making the Cotman tubes, because Cotman's made in China now, and they are identical to the Phoenix watercolors. So I'm definitely going to be comparing these with the Cotman and Phoenix watercolors to see if they may be the same. I'm thinking that I saw how much these were going to retail for. I was thinking it was around $8 or $9. So, you know, we'll have to see, because Cotman usually retails for around $4 or $5, so that's if you're paying full price. This, and that is quinacridone magenta. This one is dark cyan. Oh, that's a good primary. What's going on with that label? Maybe that's why they decided to do the boxes, because that does not look like a cyan. That looks like a Davies gray. The pigment codes, PB17, which is a phthalo turquoise, and PG7, which is a phthalo green. It's a color, it's a mixed color. Here we have Opera Lemon, light fastness 5. 5? Really? Is that 5 or 4? IV. I don't know my Roman numerals, but anytime you have an opera color, it's a fluorescent and it tends to fade. Now, we also want to talk about the market that these are made for. These are for the craft market. Oh, the pigments on this are, let's see. Neon yellow. Is there a pigment code at all? Or is it just neon yellow? Neon yellow, yeah. And semi-opaque, semi-transparent. That's going to fade. Which is kind of too bad, because for a cool yellow, that's a really heavy mixing color. So this one, Permanent Yellow Deep, PY65. That one looks good. So far we have one that looks dodgy. Light fastness wise, light fastness 1 here. And yeah, same information on the box, PY65. Yeah, that one looks good. That's more of a warmer yellow, or it should be anyway. Now we've got quinacridone violet, PV23, also known as dioxazine violet. Usually when I think of quin violet, it's more of like a mauve color. Goodness gracious. I do like these boxes. I'm going to have to think about something to do with these boxes because they're just too cute. PV23, yeah, nothing wrong with that. That's a good color. Are they calling it light fastness 1? Yep, I don't disagree with that. Here we have PG7, which is a phthalo green. Oh, they're calling it phthalo green. Good for you. I love it when companies use the proper names because it makes it easier if you're following a tutorial with the different supplies. Phthalo green. I'm guessing it's going to be a lot darker than what it looks like on the label if the pigment information is correct. Titanium white, that should be PW6. Yep, light fastness 1 and opaque. And this will be, I'm kind of glad they put an opaque white in here because I think the market, being card makers and maybe beginners, crafters, this would be more useful. I think people are more likely to want to use a white for a highlight or to mix with a color to make like a opaque pastel, especially for card making. Pastels are so popular. That makes sense if they're using a titanium white versus a Chinese white. And a lot of times people put in Chinese white, but it's actually a titanium white. They call it Chinese white, even though it isn't. Prussian blue, PB27. I happen to like Prussian blue. They're calling it light fastness 1, which it will kind of brown out if it's left in direct sunlight, but it will recharge when put into the shade for a while. And I mean, we also have to consider, is light fastness important in a set of paints that is marketed to card makers? Because how long are you going to keep a card? I mean, but then again, a lot of times you have a card and you tack it up on your fridge or you put it on your desk for months at a time and it's getting light exposure. So, you know, I mean, maybe you would want something that's extra light fast. It's not going to have a glass frame over it. It's not going to have a mat. It's not going to have anything protecting it in general. So you might want a more durable paint. I mean, you've got to have to decide that for yourself. I mean, like Copic markers or any alcohol markers are notorious for fading, and so that would be the same thing. They used a lot for cards, but just something to think about, and how you want your cards displayed and how you want them to last. If it's going to be in a sketchbook, it's going to be put in a drawer. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to have that environmental exposure that's going to make it fade. I'm going to put this in the middle because, you know, the court's out on, people have varying beliefs on Prussian blue. I happen to like the color. It's the cool blue I started with when I began watercolor painting. Now there's phthalo blues that are much more robust and light fast, but I do love Prussian blue, so I can't hate that. Toluidine red, that's a new one. PR3. This is a fugitive color. That's why it's a new one, because they don't use it very often because it is fugitive. Often it's used in, I think it's often used in cosmetics and plastics, or maybe just plastics. But the reason they don't typically use this in artist colors is because it's very fugitive. The Daler Rowney Aquafine used to have a PR3 in it. And and this would be our warm red, but we're going to put this right over here. They're calling it Light Fastness 1, which I'm going to have to re-look that color up because I am pretty sure that's a fugitive color. So let's just put this over here for right now, and I will do some research on it and double check because I don't want to tell anybody wrong. And my allegiance, I am art supply agnostic. My allegiance is to you, dear viewer, and making sure that you get the supplies that are worth the money and that you are going to enjoy. And I'm not saying it's not worthwhile to buy a color that's not light fast if you love the color, but I think you need to know, if you're painting something as a gift for your, grandchild and you want to last their whole lives and it's made with a fugitive pigment, you have the right to know that, you know what I mean? And then we have phthalo blue, which is PB15, and that's a very light fast color, and they are calling it Light Fast 1. I think it's kind of strange that they have a dark cyan and a phthalo blue because those colors are both cool blues. They would do very similar colors mixing. I'm thinking maybe the dark cyan is there because it's a very trendy color, that teal color. Big omission in this set, though, I can see already is that, and it's 10 colors, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're coming out. They're starting with 10 colors. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something. There's no ultramarine blue, and that is like your warm blue. So when I mix colors, I do a split primary color system. So you have a warm and a cool yellow, you have a warm and a cool red, and then you have a warm and a cool blue. And we've got 3 cool blues here, no warm blue. There's a violet, which, so we'd be able to mix our whatever purples we wanted. We could always alter it with a violet, but I think to have 3 cool blues and no warm blue is a really big oversight. There's also no earth tones, which is very strange because if you are marketing this to a craft company, to a craft market, to assume that your customers can mix like a burnt umber or a burnt sienna or yellow ochre or a sap green, any of those desaturated neutralized colors, is a big assumption because generally your craft consumer is going to buy more different colors and they are going to have the products do the heavy lifting versus kind of working with a limited palette and then mixing to create your variety. So I think that's if they are going after the craft market, not having any brown, not having a warm blue, and some of the other like more common convenience colors is a little bit concerning. And if I am right on the price of these being around $9 a piece, that's $90 to have all these colors, and you could do much better with $90 in a professional range. You could get the Daniel Smith 6 color mixing essential set for oftentimes under $40 on Amazon, sometimes around $30. Paul Rubens has a gorgeous 24 set for $40 that would be artist quality and give you your split primaries plus all your convenience colors that you could want as a crafter. So this paint's really going to have to impress me to hit that $9 price point, $8 to $9 price point, if that's what I'm remembering correctly. But I'm going to go find some pans and we are going to fill a palette. We're going to do some swatching and we are going to begin this review. And I will do this review over the course of probably a couple weeks because I will need to try these from a dry down state because I mean that's the bonus of watercolors. That's why they're also selling a palette, is so that you can squeeze them out in your palette and let them dry down and then not waste any. Watercolors are a very affordable medium in that way. But I'm just not sure about this color selection. I think there's too many fugitive colors for the amount of colors you have, and I think it's omitting some really useful colors. So stay tuned, dear viewer, and we will get to the bottom of this. And we're also going to figure out if this might be made, because any craft company selling media generally is not making their own media. I mean, you got to figure it. It's expensive. Would it be better to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars developing your own line of paint in your own factory with chemists and specialists, or spending a couple thousands of dollars to bring a product that's already tested and vetted and pretty good? It makes sense to go the cheaper route because you're not going to be able to sell the products for high enough to recoup your cost in a crafter's market. There are so many big legacy paint companies that have a hard time staying afloat. And they already have the R&D done from centuries ago. So yeah, it makes sense that they would private label this. And yeah, we're going to figure out who they're private labeling it from, allegedly. I gotta say allegedly, I don't want to be sued. And they were kind enough to send me this for free. So certainly I don't want to trash any company, but I do want you to know what you're paying for. And then you can decide whether it's right for you or not. So onward. I thought I'd turn the camera on while I'm filling my palette just because I want to show you how to insert half pans into these. This tray is removable and it has all the prongs are bent inwards. And what you want to do is take your half pan. You can purchase these on Amazon. I get them by the hundreds. And then you just snap them in. If you're not hearing that snap, it might be because your prongs are pushed out. You want to push the prongs in, so when you push your half pan in, it's going to grab it. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's how many colors we have. Now I also think that I want to maybe make some pastel tones, because I think that with the titanium white, that might be kind of a fun thing to do. I don't know if I want to dedicate half pans to that though. Yeah, we might just mix that in a little palette or something, because I don't know if I want to. I don't know. Let's pour these out and see. So I've put these in order from in kind of a rainbow order. I've got cool red, warm yellow, cool yellow, green, the coolest of the blues, the next warmer, and then the warmest, which is Prussian, which isn't really that warm. Then we've got our purple, and then we've got our white. So I actually might maybe a little space to the white. And now let's fill them up. So looking at these, they really look like the Cotman tubes. I don't know how full I want to fill these, honestly. Do I want to have a palette dedicated to these? I'm not sure. But you know what? You got to fill them. I generally, and I don't like to just kind of do tiny little fills, because I like having, I don't like to have to keep refilling. I like to have enough in there so it can dry down. I can see if it's going to crack, you know. Unless I'm not sure about a palette or a set of paints or a color, then I might just put a little dab in. Let's see. They're coming out of the tubes really well, which is what I would expect, since they are artist quality, professional quality, allegedly. I mean, I think they're going to be fine. I mean, I think they're going to perform well. Cotton's not a bad paint. I don't know if that's what it is. I mean, this is just my first impressions. People love those first impressions on YouTube. Giving the people what they want. Ooh, that is actually a really pretty teal, though. So what I think is people will probably end up buying this by the, well, I don't know. I don't know what people do. I would say, my opinions right now, just if you're curious about these paints, but you don't want to buy all of them, would be, I would get the Opera Lemon, the Quinacridone, actually no, I'd get the Permanent Yellow Deep, the Quinacridone Magenta, and the Phthalo Blue. Because, oh my, that is neon. That is very neon. Gosh, I'm wondering why they have this color range. I've got to see if somebody else has a color palette that's similar, and then maybe they're just kind of riffing off that because it's popular. That would not surprise me. The only one I know doing a neon yellow is Christy Rice. She has a neon yellow in her palette. I would do a Pyrrole Scarlet over this red just because it's so much more light fast. And the color is very similar. Personally. Well, they all poured out really well. You could fill it most of the way up, let it dry, and then top it off. You could like stir it with a toothpick to get to the corners if you want to. Depends on how particular you are with things. Yeah, I'm gonna go get some, I'm gonna just grab some paper. We'll do some swatching. We'll see. We'll see what we get. I'm gonna take a black marker and draw a line, and then we can see how opaque or how translucent these are. I think they're all going to be fairly translucent. Alright, that's an alcohol marker, so it won't run. And I think what I'll do off camera, because it'll be terribly boring to watch, is I'm going to write all of the colors and their pigment numbers there, and then I wonder if I should actually break it up. Maybe I'll do 2 ranges, 2 rows, so we can really we can have those swatches nice and big. Why did I go so low? Let's turn this around. Let's do it like that. Oh, we have a little bit more room. I guess I was thinking I would do really long swatches, but I'm like, that really doesn't make sense. Let's do this and really fill up that space. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna write down the names. I'll be back in a moment. All right, I'm all set up. That's had plenty of time to dry. Here is my my little setup here. I've got all 10 colors put out into half pans. I might regret that, but that's what we're gonna start off with. And we're gonna go in rainbow order. We're gonna do Quid Magenta, Tolidine, Red. This is not a light fast color. I did double check it. It's usually used in children's or low grade craft supply, craft paints. Not light fast in watercolor, that PR3. Then we're just gonna work through the rainbow here, and then I have pulled some paints that I think these are probably the same as, but you know what? I can't say until I've tried, and I will use the largest of the paintbrushes that we have here. We do have a stray hair. I'm hoping that will just kind of work back up into the... You know, I might switch brushes though, I'm gonna be honest. This is pretty small for me, this number 6 round. I'm gonna start by wetting, not the entire square, but a good portion of the square here. And I'm leaving space down below so I can test out a couple of color paints that I think might be the same. All right, so we're gonna start off with some magenta. Let's add a little more water to that. It's not a terrible, not a huge amount of flow here. PR122. I think that's reasonably light fast. We see that one a lot. I'm just going to pull that down. Very transparent. I like that. Beautiful. Not a lot of flow though. Let's go into our next one. Actually, maybe I'll just start by putting the color out and then adding water with my brush. Let's see how that does. This is that PR3. I mean, it's a pretty color. There's nothing wrong with the way the color looks. Start adding water and bringing it down. Gotta see if I can figure out, maybe I just completely had a fever dream and I don't know what they're gonna charge for these paints. Very vibrant so far. I just want to get a fairly good mass tone over the swatch. This one's nice and translucent, permanent yellow deep. I think this is going to be a pretty good mixer. Sometimes it's hard to get a gradient with dye-based colors. They just want to fill the area, as opposed to an artist grade pigment. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all colorants. Neon yellow. That is very neon. That will probably be actually fun to mix in. But when you mix with the neon, it looks great at first, but with sun exposure, that neon's going to fade out. And so, like, if you're mixing your green with that neon yellow, it's going to end up being very blue when you're done with it. Let's try the phthalo green. Ooh, you know what? This is PG7. That looks like a PG36 to me. That says PG7. That looks like, that's, which should be phthalo blue, phthalo green blue shade. This looks like phthalo blue yellow shade to me. So I think that might be mislabeled. So when I compare, I'm gonna have to definitely compare it next to a phthalo green yellow shade. Which are both phthalo greens, but often they might be called something different. That doesn't really look like a phthalo green. It must have some fillers in it or something. It looks like it has yellow in it. It looks even more yellow than your typical PG36, which I think it's probably a PG36. Let's look at dark cyan. This looks like a beautiful color. Oh, it is. It's kind of like a peacock blue. Why did I do that? Dipped it in my dirty water. Grab a little bit more of that. Oh, it's pretty. It's very pretty. You can definitely see that PB17 in there. I'm not going to tell you. Well, I'm going to have you watch the swatches to begin with before I tell you what I think these are. Did I already tell you what I think these are? I think maybe I already did. I don't know. What is life? Okay, next up we have a straight phthalo blue. That does look like a straight phthalo blue. It's intense, if you will. Everything's very transparent. I am pleased with that. Which is really great because this is marketed by a stamp company to stampers. Having a transparent paint is really good because when you're stamping, you're generally stamping with a waterproof black ink if you want a watercolor. And that way you'll be able to see all your line work and all your details, which makes the painting a little bit easier because you don't have to do all that detailing work. Now this should be Prussian blue. Oh, that looks like your typical Prussian blue. That's good. This brush is fine. It's not my, it's just kind of small, and we've got that stray hair, and it's not holding that much paint, so probably going to be fun. It's probably going to be good for what it's meant for rubber stampers to paint small images, because you know you're not going to want too much paint, too much water. As a painter, though, I don't think you're going to enjoy these brushes as much. So it just depends. Like if are you doing a painting, or are you working on a tiny card? You know, whatever. It's got to meet the use of the customer. And there's tons of paint companies out there, so they're probably trying to meet the needs of their stampers, which is absolutely good for a company to do. I don't want to yuck on anyone's yum, but I know we all get super curious about new paints, so I want to make sure you've got the information you need. These are definitely crayon box colors, you know, very, very vibrant. And now let's take a look at the white. I have a feeling that you might not want to put the white on your palette. You might want, we'll have to see how it dries down, but I think you're probably going to get most use. I wiped off the extra water from my brush. I think you're probably going to get more. You're going to enjoy using this more as full strength as a gouache almost, if you're using it for highlights. This is like in mass tone. I put a big square there because I'm like, well, you're not going to be able to tell. This is like no water added. This is straight from the tube. You generally would not paint like that. But if you're just doing a little highlight, like in an eye or something like that, and you want to do this instead of a gel pen, then that's going to work. Now let's add some water to it and fade it out a little bit. Looking at the undertones of this, it's a very cool white, not yellowy, so it's a nice bright white color, and it's pretty opaque, honestly. Okay, so now something I want to do is I want to make some pastel tones. And I'm going to just swatch them out over here. Actually, before we do that, no, let's do that first because I got white in my brush already. So let's take some white and some pink and some magenta. Now, yes, you can absolutely just add water to any of your paints to make them lighter. The reason you might want to do white is because you want to make them more opaque, or you want to make them less watery, because to lighten up this to be that light, you're going to have to add quite a bit of water to it. Like I'll do it over here. And it's going to make it just like to kind of rise up, take a lot to dry. It's going to push the pigment out to the edges. See how the edges are a little bit darker there where we've added a lot of water? It's going to push the pigment out to the edges and give you kind of a halo effect. So that's why you might want to add white and make a pastel versus just adding water to it, especially if you're, you know, maybe you're painting some macaroons, you stamp some macarons and you want to paint them, make them pastel. There's nothing wrong with that. You're going to get a different look. That's going to look a little more vibrant when it's dry and a little more luminous. That's going to have more of a matte opaque pastel look. So it just depends on what you're going for. There's no right or wrong. People get all up in arms about it, but it's, you know, what's the look you're going for, honestly. And what's the market of these paints? These paints are for, right? It's like, I've got to evaluate them. I'm going to evaluate them as you're buying paints to paint with, but also I've got to evaluate them as who these are marketed for. These are marketed for rubber stampers. And I'm not saying they should have less, they don't need to have paint that's as high of a quality. I'm just saying they have different, these pastel out really nicely. It's pretty as pastels. They have different needs, you know? Pastel neon yellow. That sounds like an oxymoron. Also, when you do add white or water to lighten up your color, you do reduce the light fastness of that color. FYI. Even if the color is light fastness 1 and your white is light fastness 1, because you're spreading out those colored molecules, you're going to end up with a less light fast color. Let's do... Oh, isn't that a pretty mint green? So, I mean, this is no ground earth-shattering information here. Adding white to a color makes pastel. That's pretty, isn't it? That teal, I think that's going to be a popular color. It is such a pretty color. You don't need a lot of the color to tint the white. They're very strong colors. I could go with more white on that, actually. They're nice and clean. I will give them that. That's really nice. You want to have a nice, clean color. Because you can always desaturate. You can't make them brighter. Alright, so there's our pastels. I think that looks pretty nice. Now let's do some color mixing. Let's mix our cool primaries. We've got our cool yellow. Is this neon yellow? Let's just grab that with a little bit of, making sure I don't hit any of the white. And I'm just going to bring it out on either side for mixing. Then we have our cool blue. I'm going to go with the phthalo because that's more of a pure blue. We'll bring it out towards where we're going to have our red, and we'll bring it over here and mix it in with our yellow. Actually, I'll mix a little bit on the palette with the yellow too. Makes a gorgeous green. Then we'll do our cool red, which is our magenta. We'll bring it out here into our purple. Oh, that makes such a pretty purple. Look at that. That's gorgeous. They're kind of neon. They do make a very neon-y looking color. I'm going to mix the I'll mix the orange out here because I think it's just the red will overtake it. The yellow's a little on the weak side, so I think substituting the yellow for the warmer, the other yellow would be a little bit better. Let's try that. Let's do the other yellow plus the magenta and see what we get. Yes, that's a better orange. Makes a good orange. And then if we do the other yellow plus the phthalo, that's going to make kind of an olive green, I think. Pretty though, it's much more natural. Yeah, so that gives us some nice options there. So now let's mix our warm colors. So we're going to have the Tuladine red. Bring it down a little bit on each side. We're going to have the permanent yellow deep. I'm going to bring that up there. Makes a gorgeous orange. I'll mix a little bit on the palette too. Yeah, that makes a beautiful orange. And then we're going to do our Prussian blue because that's our warmest blue. We don't have an ultramarine blue. Let's mix a little bit of that on the palette as well. That makes a beautiful neutral green as well. That's pretty. And then I think it's going to make a pretty gray. It's going to make a pretty grayed out purple. I'll mix it right up here because I know that I won't have enough. Yeah, it almost makes a black. It's so dark and desaturated. So that's our warm primary mixes there. So if we want to make some neutrals, it's pretty easy. What you do is you take colors that are across each other from the color wheel. So you could do blue and orange, you could do yellow and purple, you could do green and red, and those are always going to give you a neutral color. So let's do, we've got this, you got this purpley color. Maybe add a little bit more of that blue into it. Let's add some yellow to that. Got a little bit more yellow. Very easy to mix neutrals. You take some of this green and mix it with some of the pink. Very, very easy to mix neutrals with these colors. That's looking a little purple, so I'll add a little more yellow to it. Palette mud is great for neutrals. So mixing, it does great. The color's nice and transparent. More transparent colors always mix better, so that's great. You'll be able to get plenty of browns. Be able to get. Let's see if we can mix a yellow ochre. Let's take the permanent yellow deep. Let's take a little touch of the Quin Violet. Let's see. I feel like it needs to be a little bit warmer. Let's take some of that red. Let me clean my brush off. A little touch of that warm red. A little bit more purple. That's kind of a burnt sienna color. Let's do a little bit, let's take some of that color out and add some yellow to it because I've got a little bit of white. Because we need to desaturate it a little bit. The white will help desaturate it. And not quite a yellow ochre. Let's add some of this palette mud into it. A little bit more white because yellow ochre is more of a pink, a little bit more of a. That's a little bit better. Kind of more of a Naples yellow. It's a little bit better. It's a little bit more of an opaque color, so you need to opacify it a bit. So yellow ochre is tough to get, but you definitely can mix up plenty of browns and pastels and other colors with it. So it mixes well, so that's good. So I think what I'm going to do is clean up my palette, and then we're going to compare this with some other paints that I have that I think they're very similar to. All right. So I did some sleuthing, and I think I know what these paints might be. And we are going to do some comparisons and see what we think. So this was my first thought, was that they are probably similar to the Phoenix Artist Watercolors. They're both 8 ml tubes. And yeah, just very similar pigments, paints anyway. Very similar in feel, very similar to the Cotman. But I do notice that the caps and the bodies look a little bit different. So I'm definitely gonna have to I'm definitely gonna have to compare and see. So that the Phoenix ones, in my opinion, are the same as like the Common watercolors. But then when I looked at these tubes, they actually looked a little bit more like the old Premier from AC Moore. So what I'm gonna, but that doesn't have any sort of information on it other than made in China. So I don't know. We're gonna test them out. We're gonna see if we can find any sort of similarity besides the looking of the tubes and the size and all of that. So we'll see what we can figure out. I always thought these Premier tubes are very similar to Cotman. I got the Phoenix. I've got the Phoenix dried down in pans. I've got Cotman in pans, and I've got the Phoenix in pans and in tubes. So let's see what we can find out. Quin Magenta P122. Let's see if I have a similar color. This one's PB19. I don't know what the Permanent Rose is from Premier, but I'm going to give that a try. And I've cleaned off my palette, so I'm just gonna squirt out what I think here. That does not look the same as the magenta we have there. And then I have a cadmium red hue from Phoenix, which seems like it may be near the Tulane red. Tulane, not Tulane. Yeah, that doesn't seem the same either. But the containers look very similar. Then I've got this permanent no, that's one of the new ones. I've got the permanent yellow deep from Altenew, and I got this cad yellow hue from Premier. That doesn't look the same either. I've got Intense Green, I've got Hooker's Green Light, and I've got Viridian Hue from Premier. Let's see, that's Intense Green. Usually your phthalo greens are your Intense Green. That looks like it might be similar. Then I got Hooker's Green Light. That looks like it might be a little bit more similar. And then we've got Viridian Hue. Yeah, I don't know. I thought these would be a lot more similar when I squeezed them out. But it could just be that I don't have the right colors. Or it could be they're completely different paints. Who knows? Dioxazine Purple. That's the same. That's probably going to be the same color. But will it be the same in looks? And then I've got Intense Blue, which will be a phthalo blue. Oops, let's squeeze a little bit more than that. And I've got Prussian Blue. So let's see how these, now these are discontinued. These are just a white labeled store brand from AC Moore back when they were in business. They didn't last long. They were under the Nicole brand. So you can't get those anyway. But anyway, let's just see how these compare. I'm going to start off with the blues because those look like they're going to be the best chance of being matches. So let's start with the Prussian Blue. Now we'll do a quick swatch of the not similar, but man, it's hard to tell. I feel like the Altenew is actually a little bit more pigmented, so that's a good sign for Altenew. Let's do the phthalo blue. Maybe do a little bit more. That's the Premier. And this is the Altenew. Boy, those look pretty close. Well, but of course they're phthalo blues. They're gonna look close. I gotta label these. I already know I'm gonna lose my. This was Premier. This is Altenew. Oh my god, I've already forgotten what I've done here. All right, let's blot that out and try that again. Yeah, I can see undertones though. The undertones don't look the same. Let's do Premiere. I think that's how I had it. So okay, so Premiere was up here. Altenew was right here. Yeah, I'm gonna say those aren't a match. All right, let's try the violet. Let's see. Let me just Premiere, and then I'll do Altenew underneath. Okay, so Premiere first. That's when I squirted out here. And this is the Altenew one. Close, but the Altenew one is a little bit pinker. All right. Okay, you know what? Look at that. Okay, so let's do, I don't think these are going to be the same. This is the, let's do, oh my gosh, I should have, PR. I'm going to do Premiere, Altenew, Phoenix, Cotman, because that's what I think are what they are. So I'm going to go ahead and write those down just so I have a space to put them. I'm glad there's only 10 colors here. Premiere, Altenew, Phoenix, Cotman, PR, Altenew, PH. This is my very own scientific test. Okay, so let's see for, yeah, this is not the same color. It's pretty though, isn't it? Not the same color though. They feel kind of similar. Yep, definitely not the same color. I'll put a little more pigment in there actually though, because I'll be comparing it to those others. Yeah, that looks more orange. Yeah, that's definitely more of like a neutral bright red. We've got this, which is, I would say more like the deep color. But still, it's not as warm as the Altenew. The quality seems very similar though, but and then let's see, I'm thinking this green is maybe the closest. Let's see, I don't know. Yeah, actually, I don't think any of them are really that close in the green department, but I will try this one that's a little bit more of a similar color. Yeah, it's still more blue. Yeah, that's not the same. See, the Altenew is much yellower. All right, so I'm gonna say no, they're not the same as the Phoenix from Nicole or AC Moore. All right, so those can go. We're gonna get those out of the equation. So I'm thinking maybe Cotman. So let's just go ahead and grab my Cotman colors here. Now let's just take this mixing area out and see. All right, I think that the Quin Magenta, let's see, that's PR122. I wonder if any of these are PR122. You know what, I'm going to grab my swatch, I think, for this, because otherwise I won't know what the pigment numbers are. I'll be right back. The clip I just did might have been completely out of frame, so if nothing preceded this and you didn't see where I did those swatches, that's because things were out of frame and I ditched it. And just to recap, I compared these against the Premier by Nicole paints that I thought they were very similar to, because the tubes looked so very similar. I'll just show you the tube shape and size looks so very similar. Same size, same caps. I thought they might be the same company. They could be, but the colors were not perfect matches, so I'm going back to the drawing board to see if they are more similar to something else. And I think I might have had my camera not everything in frame, so I just wanted to correct that. And I went and got my swatches for my Winsor & Newton Cotman and my Phoenix, because I wonder if maybe there's similarity. I don't see a pink made with PR122 in Cotman, but I might have it in Phoenix, because Phoenix does have some colors that Cotman doesn't. Cotman does not do a PR3 because it's a very fugitive color, so we can skip on that. PY65, do they have that one? I don't know if they have it. I don't see it as a single pigment color with them. Gosh, maybe not. This would be the closest one. The fourth one in. Let's just do that a quick swatch there. Close, but it doesn't seem to be quite as warm. The next one would be, we don't have neon yellow, Phthalo green PG7, but you know what? I think that's more like a PG36. To me, it looks more like that. See, this is what PG7 generally looks like. It's a little bit bluer. They call it Viridian hue, but this would be like phthalo blue-green shade. And this is phthalo blue-yellow shade, PG36. So I think that might be wrong, like a labeling, but I could be wrong. But I'm going to try that one. That should be this green right here, I think. Yeah. But no, that's still even more, green. Let's try this one right here. This one is emerald. And that one, no, that's not the same. You know what, guys? I think I might be stumped. I thought for sure I would know what this is. Okay, so we've got a turquoise in Cotman, which is a combination of PB15 and PG7, not PB17, like they're saying, but we can try it. I don't think it's quite the same. This definitely looks more blue to me. Let's see, that would be the fourth one in here. Yep, so way more blue. Let's see, then we got phthalo blue. That should be a pretty easy one. That's the fifth one in. They call it intense blue. That looks just like the Premier, but not so much like the Altenew. Then we got Prussian blue, which is the next one over. That seems a little bit more pigmented than the Premier. Pretty close to the Altenew, but I don't know. I don't know if I'd say it's the same. Let's see, the Dioxazine Violet. Where are we? We're up here. I'm going by pigment number. They call it, they're calling it, I don't know what they're calling it, but that one might be a better match. I gotta re-swatch the, Altenew one. They, I don't know. No, they're not the same. Huh. Okay. I am really really stymied because I'm kind of thinking, who's making their paint then? The only other thing I think it might be, I'm gonna try the Phoenix too, but the only other thing I think it might be would be oh, you know what? I think I'm gonna try this color. I know it's a different pigment, but no, that's way too red. Try this one. Maybe it's Paul Rubens. That would explain the higher price. Nope, that's not the same either. I know they're getting it from somewhere. I know they're getting this paint somewhere. So I'm like, where are they getting it? All right, I'm just gonna use the Phoenix I had squeezed out onto this palette here. All right, so this would be the closest Phoenix version I have to that. Still more orange. I don't really have one that's close to the magenta. That's close, but I don't think it's the same. Oh, there's a more, is that one? That one's closer, I think. Phoenix. I don't know. They probably look about the same on the camera, but I am not convinced. It looks like this one might be the closest for the green. Nope, not the same. Guys, I think this one might have stumped your old Yep, that's like the Cotman. I knew the well, I'm not surprised because with Cotman, maybe I don't have oppression in that set. With Cotman and Phoenix, I know they seem to be like so very similar, like 99.9% similar. I'm not getting the similar with Phoenix in this set. So, all right, you know what? I've got one more brand that I think this might be similar to. That's the Paul Rubens tube paints that haven't been available for quite a while. I'm going to pull those in similar colors and see if I can find a similarity there. And also what we could do before we do that is do a glazing test and then do a lifting test. But I think I'll let this dry because I'm afraid I'm going to run my hand in it. So hang on a moment. Hold on a second. I just got my set of 48 Phoenix paints, which has some like that PR3 red and some other colors that are not on the Cotman line. And this is the Phoenix half pans. I'm going to try a couple of these because I think that some of these might actually be similar. So this one, which is a combination of PY97 and PY65, I'm going to try that one because boy, that one looks awfully close. I think I'll do those strokes up high. Actually, no, you know what? I'll put them right. Hey, that looks closer. Now this is the PR3 right here. That is a third one in. That one does look a little bit more, that looks more like it. But it could just be the similarities of pigments. Let's see. I don't have, do I have a PR122 color though? I have it in a mix in that one, but I don't have it on its own here. So I don't know, because I think this might be the only color, the full set of colors that Phoenix offers. So if there's a color there that is not offered, then yeah, that doesn't seem to be the same. Although, look at that. Is that teal? That says PB15 PG7. I don't know. I don't think that's the... Yeah, that's not the same. All right, I just had to try that because that yellow and that yellow and red were really close. I think the yellow and the red seem the same, but the other colors, not so much. And I think if they were doing boilerplate white labeling from Phoenix, they would just go ahead and grab these colors. So, yeah, I don't see a color with enough similarities. Oh, wait, maybe that one. Which one? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in. 5. I think there we go, actually. That looks good. That one from the, that's PG7 plus PY1. And I did make a note of that because PY1 is very fugitive. That looks like the same color right there. Maybe they were going with those colors because they're not in the Cotman range, if they are in fact going with Phoenix, but there's no neons that I know of. But they could sell neon paints that I'm just not aware of. That's definitely an option. So where's Prussian blue? Prussian blue that's Prussian, right? Oh, that's so small. The writing is so small. Let's try that. This is the Phoenix. Gosh, it looks close. That looks close. And let's look at the phthalo blue, which is right next door. I'm just going to put it right here. Yeah, that is definitely more green than the Altenew version. All right. I don't know. I'm going to find my Paul Rubens tubes and see what I can find for similar colors, because I'm not convinced that this is a Phoenix / Cotman / Premier white labeling. I think it's something different. That's neat though, because I'm very, very rarely surprised. Just the packaging on these looked so much like the Cotman, but then when I pulled them out, I'm thinking, no, they don't. They don't look the same as the, they don't look the same as these. Well, I'm going to find the Paul Rubens. I'm going to compare against them. Maybe Paul Rubens does white labeling and I just didn't know. So my last ditch attempt to figure out who might be making these paints, I thought I would looking at the tube and knowing the fact that they're made in China and they're pretty decent paints, I thought, okay, maybe Paul Rubens. So this is what the Paul Rubens tubes look like. They're 8 ml, just like the, some of them, they come in 8 ml or 15 ml or 12 ml. And the caps look similar. Not exactly the same, but similar. So I figured I'm going to give it a try. So I have this permanent yellow medium, which is PY65, the same as the permanent yellow deep. I'm going to give that a try. And I know I have these in a palette somewhere, but I figured I would just go from the tubes, because I'm using these from the tubes. It would just give me the most accurate No, that's not exactly. But it also is medium and not deep, so. Then we get permanent violet. Oh gosh, I should write PR somewhere. I lost my pen. This is, yeah, PR. Let's see, let's do a PR right here. I'm just going to actually use do it right into the, yeah, the Paul Rubens is much more concentrated. I don't think it's Paul Rubens. But I'm going to try what I have for Paul Rubens anyway, just to rule it out anyway. Guys, this might be the one that stumps me. I'm honestly not a huge fan of sticking my paintbrush into the tubes, because what if I've got, I don't know, funk on my paintbrush from my water jug. Now, let me see. Maybe the... You know what that looks like, though? That looks like what they're calling their phthalo blue, but not quite. Let me just... No, that's a Paul Rubens Sea Blue, which is PB15. PB15:3 or just PB15? PB15:3. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be an exact match of either of those. I feel like the phthalo blue from Altenew is just a little bit warmer, honestly. It's like almost like a phthalo blue sapphire or red shade, although it's just PB15 is what it has written there. Well, let's see. We've got magenta, PR122. Try that. That is a pretty color. Ooh, that's pretty close. I gotta reattribute that though. It's close, but I don't know. Let me squirt a little bit of that over here. Gosh, those are close. And I found an old Cotton Tube Cadmium Red actually that is PR3 from like back in the 90s when I used to teach at the senior center, and I used this in my warm red. So at one point they did use PR3 back in the day. I am doing this because that's a... not the same though. This definitely, the Cotman one feels a little more transparent. Interesting. I mean, this is really old. It would be a moot point because I'm sure this recipe isn't still in use, but I just thought it was interesting. Oh, and I wanted to show you a tube of the Cotman paints just so you could see how similar they are to the Altenew. But, you know, the caps are a little bit different. All right, I don't think it's Paul Rubens. All right, I'm gonna rule out Paul Rubens. It's not similar enough. It's going to be interesting when I paint with these because that I think is going to give me a better idea. So the other thing I thought, this might be a long shot, but I thought maybe the Murray's Masters. However, the fact that I don't have I have quite a few Murray's Masters colors and I don't have that many ones that match up pigment-wise, it makes me think that this is probably a long shot. But let's see. Here we have Doc's the Brilliant Purple, and this is called, they called it Quinn Violet. So I'm just gonna, I am doing what I said I wasn't gonna do, but I am gonna, ooh, you know what, that one looks pretty close though. I'm just gonna put that right over here. I don't know. I have to let it dry, but I don't think so. This seems a little pinkier. This is probably terribly boring. I apologize. But I just get like, I get something stuck in my craw and it's like I want to figure it out. This is the Verdian PG7 by Murray's Masters. And I'm wondering if maybe that, I think it's too blue. Yep, way too blue. Kind of close to the dark cyan though. But that's too green. It's kind of like a mix. Yeah, no, I'm saying no on that. It was a long shot, but I thought made in China, decent quality, similar tubes, but two different. Let's try this one here. This is Murray Masters Prussian Blue. Gosh, it's close. I mean, that one I would say seems like it could be the same. Oh, I kind of feel like, you know, you're perfume shopping and you've smelled so many different perfumes that you're like, I don't even know what I'm smelling anymore. I'm gonna already say no. I can tell that's not close. Even though it's PB15, like their phthalo blue, I can just tell that it's got white in it. And phthalo green. This is our last chance at matching that green with something I have. Maybe they just really found a totally different supplier I've never had paint from before. That's exciting. Let's see. No, I don't think that's, yeah, it's definitely more blue. All right, I do not know who's making these paints, so that's crazy. I can usually figure it out. So I want to do a glazing swatch on each of these. I'm humbled. I'll start off with magenta. Now this will just kind of show us how well these glaze. I think it's going to be pretty good because they're so transparent. Beautiful. I wonder, man, who else is making paints in China this good? But using some of those questionable pigments. They're very transparent. I do like that. Could they have the pigment numbers wrong? What is life? And why this selection of colors? I have so many questions. That's nice. Maybe it's going with their particular line of colors. I mean, I don't know. None of these colors seem to be like named after other colors. But you know what? I don't use I have a few of their like mini inks, but I don't have a lot of their inks. I have some of their coloring stuff, and they do some white labeling. They had a dual-ended like fiber tip marker that was water-based that was very white labeled and not very great in my opinion. But then like the alcohol markers are fantastic. And their ink-filled brush pens are fantastic, and those are refills, and sort of the alcohol markers, so it's interesting. It's so interesting. I want to know who's making them. Oh, look at that glaze, because you can see where you've had... This is going to be really pretty for glazing. Jeez, maybe... I mean, I had a little puddle there. I am just so intrigued. Oops, and I have splashed water on there, and that's not good. I am so intrigued. If you have any opinions, if you think you might know where these come from, other than Altenew, I mean, that glazes beautifully. That phthalo blue, well, it says PB15. Usually it's PB15:3 for a typical phthalo blue. Maybe this is a phthalo blue red shade. Maybe that's what they're using for the warm red, the warm blue. I need to redo my mixing and use that as my warm blue. We're going to do that in a minute because I think, which is it might be confusing for someone following the tutorial though. It's unusual. It's unusual, and I'm not often surprised, so I'm here for it. I like the glazing for these paints. These are turning out better than I expected. Alright, glazing is good. I'm not going to glaze the white because the white's already opaque. Okay, I'm going to grab just a scrap of watercolor paper, just a watercolor postcard, and I'm going to redo the mixing because I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued. Okay. So if we take phthalo blue as our warm blue, let me just... If we do for our warm, we do phthalo blue. It's still cool enough to give us some good greens. I'm going to use, I'm going to use my permanent yellow. And let's do our warm red. Are we in frame? Good, we're in frame. Shoot, I think I got it contaminated. That gives us kind of an eggplanty color. And we know that that's going to make a beautiful orange. Okay, so our cool color. So now for cool, let's use Prussian blue as our cool color. I'm going to have to move, well, I can move those around. I'm going to move those around. Right now, making a mess. Oh my gosh, I'm making such a mess. Okay, so for cool colors, we're going to use Prussian blue, which I've moved over next to the teal color. Well, we're going to do our blue up here, apparently. I'm so flustered. I still think I should use the same yellow, but this is definitely a cool yellow. But it's so weak. Man, it makes a neon green. Yeah, look at those two blues. That Prussian blue looks cooler than the phthalo, which is unusual. And then cool red, we got a magenta. I'll move that over there because I can't remember what we had going on. That does make a decent orange. And that should make actually a good purple. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a gorgeous purple. That's weird. That's like a phthalo sapphire almost. It's or phthalo blue red shade. Interesting. Maybe they were, I bet maybe that's why they didn't do ultramarine blue, because they're trying to get like the most transparent blue. Interesting. All right, I'm gonna go wash my hands, and I'll probably end up doing some painting with these, and when we come back I'll do the final assessment. One thing before we go, I think I will do a lift test on those, because I have a feeling these are so transparent they're going to be very staining. So let's do that. Let's do a quick little lift test here. I'll use my scrubber brush. I'm gonna get a fresh paper towel too, because I am going to be contaminating things. So for the lift test, I'm just gonna scrub in a corner. This is a scrubber brush. It's meant for scrubbing and lift, and then we can see how much staining we have and if they lift up at all. I mean, that's a very transparent red. So if they're just choosing colors based on how transparent they are, I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense on why these paints are the way they are. Lifting wouldn't necessarily be an issue. Transparency would be the biggest issue for a stamp company, because you want your stamp lines to show. Because it can look kind of sloppy when you go and watercolor something after you've stamped it and you see, you know, hazy lines. I'm surprised at how well they're lifting, actually. That could have to do with fillers in the paint. although they're so transparent. So I don't think there's much for filler. That's pretty staining, but that's typical for phthalo. And it could be they just had the paints ground more finely, so they'd be more transparent. And maybe they're more of like a custom paint. All right, so staining, a little bit staining, not too bad. Staining, lifting, staining. That surprisingly is lifted up pretty well. Staining, staining, staining. So they're mostly staining colors, not surprising. Interesting. Still, that blue does look cool. That Prussian looks warmer, but maybe it's been influenced by the other colors around it. Honestly, the Prussian and the phthalo blue are pretty similar. I'm surprised they put both of those in there, especially having that color there. Why they didn't go with an ultramarine, except maybe because they wanted to be very, very transparent. Or they could have done a Victoria blue, which is PB1, which is fugitive, but they've got other fugitive colors in here. So, I don't know. Very interesting. So I'm going to clean up and think about this, and when we come back it'll be in the future and I'll have some paintings done and we can do our final assessment, but these have got me stumped. Alright guys, I want to wrap up this review of the Altenew tube watercolors. I have a lot to say in this section. I just finished up an artwork with the paints, and the only thing I added to this, it wasn't in the that wasn't these Altenew watercolors, was I sketched with a blue Poly Erase pencil just to get my drawing down. This is in Critique Club, and I'll have a time lapse on my YouTube channel. It's probably up already, actually. And then I used a white gel pen at the end just for some highlights. Overall, I'm happy with the painting, but I really don't think these paints are as high quality as they claim, and we're going to go into that a little bit. Why? One thing I'm noticing, and this isn't something I typically see with my higher grade paints, and I don't know if it's really going to show up on camera, but this little spider webby effect at the edge where colors meet, it's just a strange thing that I usually do not see in higher end paints. It's almost got a thick gloppiness. It didn't want to wash out. And there's that little spider webbiness a little bit up there too. I think it's fine in this painting. It's not a big deal, but for some reason these paints seem to want to bloom more than other paints. And this is my Arches watercolor sketchbook. I've used this so much. I'm very familiar with this paper. I've been using Arches for about 20 years, so I'm very familiar with how the paper reacts. And I definitely felt like these wanted to blossom and bloom a lot more than other artist grade paints. I did find out where I had seen a price for these, and it was when Altenew sent me the paints. What they do is they generate an order on their website. These, at the time that I'm recording this, they're not on their site to purchase yet. So going by the invoice they sent me, which like I said, I didn't pay for these. They sent these to me, but there was a price on the invoice. They had these priced at between $7.99 and $9.99 an 8 ml tube. That puts them in a pricing category with pretty much any legacy brand of watercolors. If you went to Blick, I'm talking about the price you'd pay on Blick or Jerry's Artorama. Per ml, these are more expensive than Daniel Smith even. So that doesn't seem right. Now, if I compared MSRP, yeah, it would probably be on par. These would probably be cheaper if I compared to MSRP, but who's paying MSRP? We're going to Blick and we're buying them there. Maybe we're going to an independent art store and buying paints, and at that point you'd be paying full price, but just what we'd expect to pay if we were shopping online today, either at online, which is where you buy these at Altenew, or Artistry by Altenew, or Dick Blick for any other legacy brand. You're going to pay more for these paints if the pricing is going to stay at that price point. So that's all the information I have right now. I did hop on a Zoom with Altenew. They had a informational Zoom for anybody they sent the paints to. They could come and enjoy. So I thought I'm going to check it out, see if there's anything new to learn. But they were basically going over just the basics of what is tube watercolor, kind of a beginner tube watercolor type informational lesson, kind of, because there's a lot of paper craft designers that they've sent these to that may never have used tube watercolors before. So that wasn't as useful as I thought it would be, but I did get a chance to ask a couple questions, and I was quite cheeky, and I asked them if they would disclose their manufacturer, and then they kind of they kind of, they kind of just looked a little shocked, and they're like, I don't think I could tell you that. And I said, is it Phoenix? I said, can I guess? And then they were just kind of like, had this deer in the headlights look, and I asked if it was Phoenix, and they said, we can't say anything right now without our business partner here. So, so I was kind of actually glad they didn't tell me, because if they told me, they'd probably have to say like, that's off the record. But since they didn't tell me they didn't tell me anything and didn't tell me it's off the record, I went ahead and pulled all of the higher end Chinese made watercolors that I have access to, and I decided to do some comparisons. So what I think, I don't know who's making these, to be honest, but I have some hunches. My best guess of who is making these paints would be, I think they may be made by a brand called Superior. Not Superior, I'm sorry, a brand called Supervision. Now this is their original set of watercolors. These, I really like these. I think they're very nice. I think they are a little overpriced, but at the time when I first reviewed these, I had never encountered this paint before. And this, I believe, I would say 99.9% sure this is made by the company Superior, which is a Chinese company that private labels. They make their own stuff, but they also private label them to so many different companies. And they're the ones that make the fan palettes. They allegedly do the Etcher watercolors, which are $50. These are $50. They do the Artsy set that's $25. They do Art Whale. They do a bunch of different brands. They did Artify. I don't know if you can still get those or not. I think they might do the larger set of Speer or Farben, but I don't have those. But I saw somebody else's review that looks like they do. They're great. But you can get the set very similar. You can get double this amount for like $43 under the Art Whale brand on Amazon. So, I mean, I'd say get the bigger set if you like these. I could tell there's a signature cracking that happens over time on the surface of these pans, which is a dead giveaway that is a Superior. Plus, I looked at my swatches and even some of the numbers correlated. So, this is their pan set. I prefer the pan set to the tube set. I think, especially if you want to buy an Altenew product, you're better off to do their pan set. This pan set, not the 36 pan set. That looks like, I don't know what that one is. It looks like it might be the Meaden cakes. They're not, they don't look that great. I would definitely stick to this 24 set. It's a different manufacturer altogether. And when you've got companies that are having their stuff made by factories in China or wherever, just they're not controlling it, they're not making it, they're not going to have all the information about the products, and also the color matching often isn't going to be exact. Like for the tubes, they said they didn't want to use their proprietary names because they want to use the names that the artists would be giving to them, and that's something I listened to on the Zoom. So it's nice to get their perspective of why they chose the colors they chose, and why they name them the way they name them, because a lot of times they'll do names that will match the colors they have on hand. So like all of these names are ones that are that will match their ink pads and markers and whatnot, which is very handy for a paper crafter that might just want to have things coordinate. They don't want to learn color theory necessarily. They're making cards and scrapbooks, and they just want to play with some watercolors that's going to match what they're doing. It's going to be easy to coordinate, and going after that market with names like this is it makes sense. Cute tin. The quality is good. I would highly recommend this one over the tube set. The tube set, and this, I was racking my brain, and I've got so many papers here. I've got so many things to compare here. So first of all, let's compare their 24 pan set to their 10 colors of the tube watercolors. So these are their 10 tube colors, and this is their 24 pan set. I would say none of the colors are exact duplicates, really. There's a fall, there's a Starry Night that's a Prussian blue color. That's very similar. But beyond that, I mean, that Permanent Yellow Deep falls between the two colors they have in the pan set. I prefer all the greens of the pan set to the greens there. That Seashore is fairly similar to that color, but not exactly. So, you know, I think that this is a much nicer arrangement of colors. You're going to be able to mix better because you actually have some neutral tones, because when I was doing that painting, I had to keep remixing gray and brown, and then there was a huge shift when it dried. So I think that would be beyond frustrating if any beginner hopped in here. I asked who they were going after, what was the market for these paints, and Altenew said fine artists. And I said, that's interesting because you use PR3 in this red, and that is a fugitive color in watercolor, and you have it rated as a light fast #1, which means fully light fast for 100 years, and that's not the case in watercolor. So it makes me think that whoever they're using as a manufacturer they're just using the light fastness ratings on the pigment, not basing it on what the pigment's vehicle is. So if you have PR3 in an oil paint or in an acrylic, it's going to last a lot longer than if you have it in a watercolor because of the protection that the binder gives it. And the gum arabic binder does not give it the protection, and it tends to fade. Also, neon yellow, you wouldn't really find that in a professional range because it's going to fade. And I asked them about the neon yellow, and they said that they use the neon yellow because it mixes so well with everything else. So I'm thinking, okay, I might be missing something here. So what I did was I took the colors and I made a mixing chart right here. I took, it's almost like a times table. So what you do is you take all your colors down one side and across the top, and then you mix them all together. So across the top and down the edge and on this diagonal line, you're going to have the pure colors. But here, if you want to see what the permanent yellow deep plus a 2-line red will make, you would mix them up. You just kind of follow them across like that and see where they intercepted. So what I do when I'm doing these charts, the colors that are coming down in the rows are going to be more influenced by the color on top. So if you want to know if I mixed the teal and the green together, but I had more teal, that's the color you would get. If I did the teal and green and I had more green, that's a color I would get. Because the green is weaker, actually no, teal and green, you'd get that one. Actually, they look about the same. I didn't find that much variation actually between doing that. The colors seem to lack subtlety. I get a lot of blossoms with it, and they also mixed up kind of streakily. Like when I went to paint them out, they were quite streaky. I did not get the feeling that these were a high-end paint or worth the price the more and more I used them. It's kind of the more I used them, the less I liked them. My initial opinions of these were quite favorable, but the more I used them, the less I thought they were worth it. My biggest problems with this set, and if you know, these are only available open stock, so that's great. You can just pick a couple colors, and you're not stuck with a set of colors you're not going to use. So I would say I'm glad that they did that, open stock colors, rather than doing a set where you had to buy everything. Especially if they're going to charge nearly $10 a tube for these, that means a set would be about $80. No, a set would be probably $100. Because they're available open stock, you can avoid some problems. One problem being that the phthalo blue here, it's more of a phthalo blue red shade, and the Prussian blue, they are very similar. Prussian blue is, depending on who you ask, quite fugitive. It can turn brown when exposed to daylight. You got to put it in the dark for a while, and then it will recharge itself. So between the two, I'd probably say go with the phthalo blue. This isn't a typical phthalo blue that leans green. This is a more red-leaning phthalo blue, and then Prussian blue is not terribly green-leaning. So these two colors are going to mix up fairly similarly. There's no ultramarine, which is a nice warm blue that's kind of essential in any watercolors. That's a color I use the most, and I think most watercolorists use ultramarine blue more than any other color, and that's not even in this line. There's no brown. I asked them why there was no brown, and they said because they're going to add more colors, and they're going to see how well these do and add more colors to it. And so I don't know. If I were you, you just were dying to try this line of colors. One thing that's kind of neat is they did go with single pigment color. No, they didn't. This one is not dark cyan is not a single pigment color. And this is another one, dark cyan, PB17, which is a phthalo turquoise, and phthalo green, which is that color there, PG7. So that is so redundant. If you look at the mixing chart, there's a lot of redundancy in the blue-green area because those blues, these three blues, are so similar, and they're going to yield very similar mixing results. When they said they went with the neon green because it mixed so well, I didn't really find that the neon yellow to be that great of a mixer. I mean, it makes your greens more vibrant, but that's going to fade out of your green so fast. If it's like a card on somebody's desk, it's going to fade in a month. I really don't see that's worth that brighter mixing, and I don't even really think it mixes things all that bright. It makes a pretty portrait pink when you mix it with the magenta, but I wouldn't use these colors for portraits because they're so staining and they're so kind of artificial looking, and there's no neutrals. You're gonna have a really hard time getting those portrait tones. Pastels were nice with these. but you can really mix them with anything. I think this is just kind of like, just kind of a me too type of product. Like, we got watercolors in tubes too, you know? If you want to buy for us, look, we got this too. Which is fine. So people can buy whatever they want from whoever they want, but I think it's too expensive. And I think the amount of streakiness and blooming that I got with these paints, it was just a little, it just seemed like a lower quality product. So you may be wondering, what do I think these are similar to? Well, at first I thought Phoenix, because they seemed to be pretty decent, but not the best in the world. And I was thinking, well, they kind of felt like the Phoenix, or maybe the Marie's Masters watercolors. And then I got thinking, then I swatched them out next to each other on the, I told you that, when we were doing the swatch here at the beginning of the review, which was like a week ago. So I know and I've done a lot of projects between them. So I've kind of forgot what I've already said, but, I compared them to Paul Rubens, because they're probably the highest quality Chinese paint manufacturer for watercolors that I'm aware of that I've used. Supervision would probably be the next one down. Then I'd say Marie's Masters, which may be made by Phoenix. I'm not 100% sure. Then there's Phoenix, Artist Grade. You know, those and Superior. Those are the top Chinese makers that make really good, I feel like really good for the price paints. So I figured it was probably one of those manufacturers making them. But I compared the Cotman, which is made by Phoenix, the Phoenix Artist Grade, the Paul Rubens, and I wasn't convinced that any of those were the case. But then again, I didn't have exactly the same colors. Some colors were similar, but I just couldn't get a feeling like, yeah, that's definitely it. I couldn't get a gotcha moment, I guess. And, you know, I want to be fair. So then it occurred to me, wait a minute, what about Supervision? I have some Supervision tubes. I got this set of 24 on sale on Amazon. I think I paid about 20 bucks for it, which was a great deal. This I think sells for, I don't know, I was thinking around $60. And then it was on sale for like, or that maybe it was $39, then it had like a 50% off coupon. I think that might have been it. So this was $39 worth of 50% off coupons. 24 colors. I paid 20 bucks for it. Now it's out of stock. I think they were just trying to move the inventory, but I was thinking, you know, these tubes look very, very similar to these tubes. I thought these kind of looked like the Cotman tubes, and I was thinking Phoenix originally. But, and the other thing about Supervision is they're one of the only colors, the only companies that use PR3. So PR3, Permanent Red 3, or Pigment Red 3, is something you usually see in lower quality art supplies. So I thought, okay, this is the only brand I see using PR3 in a tube paint. The tubes are very similar. They're both 8 ml. They look like they could be from the same factory. They're calling that Series B. I think this was, I can't remember what this one was listed at. They were all listed between $7.99 and $9.99. So I thought, okay, maybe these are the same paints. Now granted, this is, you know, I bought this on Amazon cheap, so it was probably like, you know, it was probably made a while back. I don't know, maybe like a year ago, because they try to churn over their products. So they don't, if they're starting to get low. So CAAM, CAAM is the parent company of Supervision. That's who I'm thinking may have made these. I wish there was some way to like, to be able to tell definitively. But anyway, so that's what I was thinking. I was thinking they might be Supervision. So what I did was I took my Supervision colors and I decided to swatch them out and swatch them out right next to the closest Altenew colors and see what I could see if I saw any similarity. I did see similarity in the Tuladine Red, actually. They almost seemed identical. Supervision seemed maybe a smidgen more concentrated. And I was using the Supervision from pans that I dried down months ago, and this was pans I just dried down last week. So the Supervision shouldn't have been stronger than nearly fresh out of the tube. But I found like the flow to be fairly similar, but not enough to give me concrete evidence. So I went through and just chose some similar colors. And the Supervision had a little more flow than the Altenew, but I don't know, they also had a little bit of that blooming characteristics that I was talking about and I said seemed kind of unusual. So I'm thinking Supervision is probably the most likely manufacturer of these paints, but I'm not 100% certain. So I did another comparison, I decided to compare them with Art Whale because Art Whale is made by Superior. I love those tube paints, and I figured, well, they went with Superior pans for, allegedly, for their watercolor pan set. Maybe they used their tubes as well. I don't know of Superior of making a 8 ml tube. I've only seen them in 15 mLs, and they've come out by a few different brands, but they're not out very much. But they're great paints. They're really wonderful quality. So I swatched out the Altenew here. This was the Art Whale. I couldn't find enough. I mean, like the magentas look very similar, and they flowed about this. They flowed very similarly, which could be attributed to the pigment, but it also could be attributed to the binders, which is, you know, I'm trying to figure out where the commonalities lie, or at least what an equivalent paint would be if you want to buy something that would be as good as that and maybe the same as that, but not spend as much money. Because that's expensive. I'm sorry, $10 if those prices are correct. If $10 for an 8 ml tube of paint and you're getting like Cotman quality, I don't think that's okay, in my opinion anyway. You can think whatever you want. I'm not bashing Altenew. I think they make beautiful products. Their stamps are super high quality. Their markers are as good as Copics, a way better value. You get more refill ink in a bottle than you do Copic. Their ink-filled water brushes, fantastic. Ink pads, I haven't used their ink pads, so I don't know about that. But stamps are second to none. But I'm gonna give you my honest opinion, and you can watch there'll be a lot of other reviews of this product because a lot of people have been sent these, so you'll be able to listen to other people's opinions too, and you don't have to go by mine. So, I mean, I personally liked the Art Whale better, but there was similarities there. So then I thought, okay, maybe Marie's Masters watercolors, because I tried the Phoenix. It seemed like they were maybe a little bit better than the Phoenix watercolors, which was like a Cotman equivalent, but not quite as good as the Marie Masters. I think they're pretty similar to the Marie's Masters watercolors. Even in the dispersion, I'm seeing similarity. The flow, I'm seeing similarity. The pigment concentration, it does feel like the Marie's Masters are more pigmented, and I did get those from dry pans that I poured like when I did the review months ago. Might have been a year ago, I don't know. But, you know, I didn't have the exact same, you know, pigment numbers. I was trying to find like a line of paints that would have the exact same pigment numbers. Like it was kind of like the stock stuff and they just picked from the stock offerings, but I couldn't find anything like that. And it could be that they are reaching out, they're using one of these companies and saying, I want you to use this pigment and I want you to use this, you know, and they are truly just using the factory and telling them what they want. Because a lot of these factories can do that too. And that could definitely be the case. Because I didn't find any chalkiness in them, even though they say, like in some of the tubes it will say semi-opaque. I didn't see anything that was semi-opaque except for the titanium white. I found these all to be very sheer. I'm surprised at how streakily they mixed and how much blossoming I got, because they didn't seem like they had a lot of filler in them, but just the way they performed, they didn't perform like a professional watercolor would, a watercolor in that price point. And of course, that's probably their MSRP. I'm comparing it to, maybe they're going to be selling them for $5 all the time. And for that, hey, I think that's a fair price. So I'm just going with the information I have in the best faith possible. I'm certainly not looking to bash this company, but, you know, I want you to know as much as you can before you buy a product. 'Cause if you buy something and you never use it, then that's a waste of money, you know? I also compared them to Paul Rubens, but I didn't find them similar at all to Paul Rubens. I found, Paul Rubens were more saturated but had less flow, where I found the Art Whale and the Marie's Masters to be similar in saturation and similar in flow. So I would say if you like the Art Whale watercolors, if you like the Marie's Masters watercolors, the Altenews are going to be very similar to that. The Art Whale and Marie's Masters watercolors are much cheaper though. You can get 24 Art Whale 15 ml tubes for, I think, around $45. So each tube is twice as big. And almost twice as big, and yeah, the price is less than half. You get 24 of them for 24 15 ml tubes for about $45. So yeah, that's a way better savings. And Marie's Masters go on sale at Jerry's Artorama for $2.99 a tube, and I think that's probably the closest I could find, or Supervision. But Supervision still, I mean, it wasn't a gotcha. When I was comparing the Supervision, I wasn't feeling like I absolutely figured it out. I was still feeling like the Supervision had more flow, and it wasn't exact. There was some similarities though. But see how that more spidery effect? You see it a little bit in that red, but there's just a spidery blooming effect that I'm seeing in the Artistry by Altenew tubes, and I'm not seeing in the Supervision as much. But I would say they're equivalent. I definitely would say they're equivalent paints. But yeah, I mean, that's what I gotta say. That's all I have to say. I also I was looking at my Supervision pan set, which, because like Supervision's kind of famous for their highly granulating watercolors. They're not much is talked about their plain standard watercolors. I think part of that is because their plain standard watercolors are plain. They're fine. They're really nothing to write home about. They're not as good as Paul Rubens. They're better, a little better than Superior, but not. Yeah, and that even is up for debate. I'd say they're pretty equivalent to to Superior. To be honest, have I gone over your head? Is anybody still there? I don't know. You're probably all asleep. But yeah, like if I compare the Quin Magenta from Supervision pans to Quin Magenta in Altenew, it's similar. It's about as similar as probably any Quin Magenta would be to any other Quin Magenta. They're not using that PR3. Aquafine, Dale Arowney Aquafine used a PR3 at one point. I don't know if they still do or not. I'm trying to see, there's a, you know, that their PV23 looks different than the PV23 here. To me, this has a more blue undertone, that has more pink undertone. The Prussian blue is pretty similar, same pigment, very similar look. But actually I'm seeing a sheen in the mass tone. I don't see that sheen in the mass tone, which gives a kind of leg up to Altenew on that one. You know, it's just, I don't know. I think if they told me, Lindsay, we're gearing this to stampers, that's why we're using these colors, we're going more for the colors and the cleanness and the no opacity so that it would show up on your stamp line, it won't show up on your stamp lines and you can be a little sloppy with your coloring and it's still going to look great and clean and neat. I think I would be like, well, that is smart. You know, that's great. You're looking for the most transparent options for the stampers. That's awesome. But to say you're going after the artist market and putting it on the Artistry by Altenew website, they've started a new website that's just for the art supplies, because they say so many artists are coming in wanting to buy their materials, but there's all those stamp sets getting in the way. I don't think that that's necessarily true, because I think I think most artists would go to Blick or Jerry's Artorama or Mary Artist or Cheap Joe's, where you're going to have this humongous selection and much lower prices and higher quality materials. And it's not knocking Altenew. Altenew is they're a stamp papercraft company, and they manufacture, I believe they manufacture their own stamps and have their dies made in the USA. So when you start adding media, you've got to outsource that. It's just too expensive for, if they were to open up a factory to make these products, it would cost so much that nobody would be able to afford them. So I don't blame them for doing this at all. But to say they're artist quality, I think and to charge that much for them, to me it just seems kind of like a not better, just more, you know? So, you know, they're not bad. If you want to buy them, buy a couple colors, try them out. I would say go with the Quin Magenta, the Permanent Yellow Deep, and probably the Phthalo Blue. I honestly think if you bought those paints, I think that would scratch the itch, and you'd only be out about $30. And honestly, I don't think there's anything in this set that you couldn't get cheaper from another brand, much, much cheaper, honestly. And I guess that's my review, to be honest. I don't think they're bad, but I think the color selection is going to be unnecessarily difficult for a beginner to watercolor. I don't think any experienced watercolor artist is going to go for these paints. So I just kind of feel like it misses the mark there. And to come out with a range of colors that are priced that high, where the quality doesn't match, and there's no brown. And I mean, like, yes, I can mix my neutrals, but I'm telling you what, the amount of times I had to go back in and mix gray, and this started off as a really dark gray and it faded out as it dried so much. I think that would be very frustrating. Then when you go in to try to match that, the color you would mix, you'd probably end up mixing it way too light to try to match it because it faded out so much. I think that it just misses too many points, and I would maybe wait a bit if you're thinking about buying these, maybe see if they come out with the other colors. It's not to say you can't mix them with other colors, you absolutely can. Something else I want to show you before we go is that my palette has all this grittiness in it from the mixes, and that does not look like a high quality watercolor to me. They usually don't mix out in such a gritty way. But there you have it. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoy these in-depth tutorials. And until next time, happy crafting.